I have received a letter from the honourable member for Perth proposing that a definite matter of public importance be submitted to the House for discussion, namely the government failing to properly invest in Australian jobs and well-planned infrastructure. I call upon those honourable members who approve of the proposed discussion to rise in their places. I call the member for Perth.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, today we have learnt that Australia's most appallingly planned infrastructure project, the Perth Freight Link, has blown out by $167 million, and that is before a single contract has been awarded, before a single shovel has hit the soil. And of course that $167 million does not include the $300 million that is needed to build a new bridge over the Swan River to actually get the traffic into the Fremantle port, because members might be surprised to know that this project, which is designed to get road truck traffic into the Fremantle port, supposedly, actually misses its mark by 1.5 kilometres. It doesn't actually arrive at the Fremantle port. So in order to achieve that, we now know from other submissions that we will need a $300 million bridge to add to the cost of this project. Nor does it include the $400 million net that we are going to need now to dig a tunnel under the Fremantle, through Hamilton Hill, because there has been a very unfortunate redistribution at a state level. And the Minister for Transport now finds that the people and businesses that are going to lose their homes and their businesses are indeed going to be in his new electorate. So he's committed to a tunnel rather than a surface road, which we know will cost at the very least net $400 million. So we're now talking, when you add all these, the 167 we've just found out about, no announcement, just found out about this, that additional 167 million, the 300 million, this 400 million, we are now going to see a project that is some $2.4 billion. Now, it is no wonder that the Infrastructure Australia report that was very quietly posted late last night on their website, no announcement, described this as a project that had high risks around its costs. Now, we also learnt today from this report that the state government had 11 other options available to them, including rail infrastructure projects. But it did not do any cost-benefit on any of these other 11 projects to see if there was indeed a more cost-effective solution. And indeed, the Infrastructure Australia made this comment about the selection criteria that was used to choose this 1 out of 12. And it said that the methodology showed significant weaknesses, was biased against low-cost options, and had limited reliance on objective quantitative evidence, i.e. they just made up the figures. So this is a damning indictment in reality on this project. And it is interesting, the Infrastructure Australia goes on to say, it notes that whilst the business case prepared by the state government claims that this is part of a broader strategy, it observes, and it actually lists, the 8 relevant planning and policy documents of the state government and notes that this project was not mentioned in any of them. So how did we get here? Well, we got here for this. Let me describe to you what happened. At the beginning of 2014, the federal government had a problem.
Members on my right will resume their seat or leave the chamber.
They were about to take $500 million.
Resume your seat or leave the chamber.
They were about to take $500 million that was placed in the budget in 2013 for rail projects in Perth. Now, this $500 million that was for those rail projects had been sought by the Barnett government, because they had gone to the 2013 election promising that they were going to build a number of rail projects, but they depended on federal government funding for those projects. But we know that because of the Prime Minister's ideological problem with rail, that they couldn't accede to the quest of the Barnett government. They couldn't leave that $500 million in, but they knew that if they took it out, they'd have a hole to fill. So what were they going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we reckon has happened from our evidence, that we had the Assistant Minister, who's with us here today, and the Finance Minister, Senator Cormann. They arranged a meeting with Minister Nelder. Now, we suspect that this is the meeting, probably when the two of them flew over across the Nullarbor together. This meeting would have taken some place around the 6th and 7th of February. Now, the minister, poor Minister Nelder, goes in with a brief. He's got a brief from his public servant to pitch for federal funds for the Outer Harbour, because we all know, as the Infrastructure Australia report says, that the fundamental problem is the Fremantle port's in the wrong place. So he goes in with this pitch. For the last 20 years, successive governments in WA have been planning to move the container terminal to the Outer Harbour, and he goes in to make a pitch for federal funds for this project. 45 minutes later, he comes out shell-shocked. He hasn't got funds for the Outer Harbour, but what he's got is the Perth Freight Link. And our records show that we've been able to extract a few documents under FOI after spending thousands of dollars and over a year of time. What we have found is a schedule of documents that shows that the first dialogue that occurred on this project between the government agencies was March 2014. And yes, this project was lobbed like a UFO in the May 2014 budget. There had been no money in the state budget for this project. Indeed, the state government had promoted during the previous election the fact that they had taken the money out for Royal Highway Stage 8 from this project. Troy Boswell was going around saying, no, we're not going to build it. We've actually taken the money out of the budget. And you compare that with what Labor did in government. When we came into government in 2001 at a state level, we recognised there was a problem. We recognised that there was a Fremantle Eastern bypass that no one was going to build. Richard Court was in government for 8 years. He said, I'm not going to build it. I'll only build it when there's consensus. We knew it was a 1970s idea that just didn't fly today. So we had the Perth Freight Network Review, a process that went on for 2 years, public, transparent process involving business, industry, local government, all of the planning authorities, environmental groups, community groups, all coming up with a workable plan. We developed a 6-point plan, and an essential part of that was getting on and building this Outer Harbour. So it is quite extraordinary today to see that we are now being saddled with a project that we know, as soon as it is open, it is going to already be out of date. That we acknowledge, as does the Infrastructure Australia, that we are going to have to move that container terminal, and that we do agree that Fremantle will continue to operate as a container terminal, you would expect, for at least 10 to 15 years, but at radically reduced figures, not warranting $2.5 billion investment in infrastructure. So, as I say, we look at this process. All of the planning that went on by the Court government, the Labor government and then the Barnett government has shown a continuity of moving forward with the Outer Harbour until suddenly the Assistant Minister and the WA Libs had a problem and had to come up with a solution that was anything other than rail. So we see already that the cost-benefit ratio of this project has dropped because of the extra $167 million cost blower. Imagine how this is going to drop once we add in the $700 million extra dollars that they're going to need to actually tunnel underneath Hamilton Hill and to actually get the project into the port. This project is a complete and utter lemon and represents an absolute wasteful expenditure on when we are needing long-term solutions in Western Australia. We do need this money spent in Western Australia, but we don't need it spent on a project for which there has been inadequate planning and which really is incapable of being made retrievable.
Yeah.